Alright everyone, so let's start with a basic question. Does God love us? Does God love us? Now most people would say yes, and that would be true. But why is there so much pain in the world? Why is there so much conflict? And why do so many different kinds of people have different ideas about the nature of God, what He does, what He is, or if even it's a He at all, or if it's not an it or a she? Why are there so many different views of God and how He controls this world? And if He does control it absolutely, why is there so much conflict, pain, and war? Inner war and outer war. And the truth is that we're looking at it from an individual perspective. When we ask ourselves, does God love us? We're talking about us as individuals, not only at just referring to ourselves as a person, but we're also thinking from our own perspective as a person. Now, our perspective does not see the grander whole. Even a single individual doesn't have the perspective of a bunch of individuals combined into him to basically judge the world, see the world as it is, or imagine how God affects the world. And this basically limits our cognition, it limits our the ability of our consciousness to grasp the grander whole, the grander design of the universe, and let alone the multiverse, multiple universes. So, yes, God loves us. So, what it comes down to is, if God loves us, then how can we reach out to Him to where we don't feel the pain that we do, where we don't have the conflict that we do? How do we reach out to God? How do we get the sun, basically, to filter down into our lives? And how we do that is very complicated. It involves breaking down our ego. It involves breaking down pride. It involves breaking down our viewpoint of the universe and accepting that we might be wrong and that other people have just as good of an idea of the universe as we do. And this is very difficult. But in order to be filled with love, we have to get rid of what is in the container that we have, the container of our heart. And what we have in the container of our heart is usually pride, ego, materialism, affection only for our own, not for other people, coldness, a desire to control. And all these things fill up our heart. And when we get a lot of those things out of our heart, when we open ourselves to the idea that we might be wrong, that we don't need to control things, that we can exist side by side with people who have different views and they're not necessarily wrong, when we empty those things out of our heart, then we find that it's very open and it's very free from this all of these weights that add up and sink us into the dirt of this world instead of allowing us to rise. Now, imagine love like helium. It raises us up the more we put into our hearts. And the good thing about the heart is that it is actually a multidimensional organ. It can basically hold more than its actual mass. It can hold more than the volume that could fit in the literal organ because it is a window into other dimensions. So we'll go ahead and write that down. The heart is a window into the beyond. Now, the heart is a window into the beyond, and we can connect to God through it. But how are we supposed to understand our relation to God side by side with every other living organism in the world, in the multiverse? And how we understand this is basically seeing ourselves as not more valuable than the things around us. Everything in the universe, everything in the cosmos and the multiverse has an equal value. There is nothing that is more valuable than anything else. Now, how you react to other human beings, how you react to other life, is based on how that life reacts to you. If that if that life tries to assail you, tries to assault you, or insult you, then you react appropriately. You can react with compassion, but you have to deal with it so that you don't belittle your soul by accepting it without a reaction, accepting pain and hardship without a reaction from sentient beings that are consciously hurting you. But you shouldn't seek revenge, which is basically responding above and beyond what the source of pain inflicted onto you. Now, this is the hardest thing to realize. Every single point of perspective of consciousness, of existence, every single point and what we view as separate pieces of life, as divided pieces of life, are rather like blood cells in the grander whole that is God. God isn't necessarily just a separate being. Well, I don't think he is at all. It is at all. I think that God is a combination of different perspectives and through the different pieces of consciousness that were separated from him by him. And these different points of consciousness, they all have different functions. They all have different missions. And they aren't bound to a single body. They exist in multiple bodies over much time. We're talking about the time it takes for a soul to be liberated, which is usually millions of years, maybe multiple Big Bangs, multiple creations. But we're all blood cells feeding the grander whole in one way or another. And if we don't act correctly and virtuously, then we won't find ourselves in a particularly good level of function in the grander whole. If we act incorrectly, we might find ourselves on the bottom, whether it comes to wealth, to health, to pain. We'll find ourselves on the bottom if we act incorrectly. We'll find ourselves down here. But if we act correctly, if we are compassionate and virtuous in the sense that we help others, try to love ourselves, love them, and sacrifice our time and maybe even our lives when necessary, that's when we head to the top of this being that one may call God. That's when we start to evolve up the form, this infinite form, really, because God is infinite, but creation and the souls bound in it are finite. Well, the souls themselves aren't, but the souls find themselves in a finite reality. And the finite reality is the only reason why I can draw a form and anybody can even see its edges, because this form does have edges, but God does not. Now, I tried to basically show how a combination of blood cells would make a being that had an upper part and a lower part. But you have your own images. No one image is correct when it comes to God. But basically, we as sentient beings, especially humanity, which I'm speaking to humanity because I'm a human and I'm sentient, obviously, and humanity is the only form of intelligent life, very intelligent life, that we know of right now. I believe there's far, far more, obviously, in the multiverse and definitely in this universe. But I'm speaking to just other humans right now. We have to view ourselves as different parts of the whole, as not existing separate from the whole, so we can serve our function of compassion, of helping one another, and of finding who we truly are within, and our personal mission, because every individual soul has a personal mission. Now, if we can focus on these things, then we will all be happier. If we focus on other people and helping other people and finding who we truly are in relation to everything else, then not a single person in the world could harm another. It wouldn't be possible. It wouldn't even have a possibility of happening if everyone understood this, that we're part of the same whole, that we're part of the same thing, and that all of time and its only purpose is for us to evolve into a liberated form, a united, liberated form that is a part of the infinity that is the original source. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope this kind of gave you a good idea of what I think about does God love us? That question. You know, we kind of went far off from what seems like the point, but I really think that the end wrapped it up as far as us being one, and how every single piece matters, but the actions of every single piece, every single soul, basically deems their magnitude in the greater being. But feel free to ask any questions. I'm always open to questions, always open to ideas for videos, and I will see you in the future.